Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with someone I've known for over 2 decades, a true leader in education and a champion for inclusion, Dr. Andrew McLaughlin, the Secretary for Elementary Education for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Andrew and I go way back to the late 90s when we worked together at Owen J. Roberts School District. He was my principal at French Creek Elementary, leading an incredible staff that made school feel like a place of creativity and belonging. I'll never forget how Andrew gave us the freedom to try fun, innovative things, all rooted in our shared belief that every student, every single one, belongs. From those days, our paths took us in different directions. Andrew moved on to Unionville-Chadds Ford, me to Delaware County for more intensive special education work. But his journey eventually led him to the Archdiocese, where he's now shaping the future of 102 elementary schools. In this episode, we're diving into Andrew's remarkable career, from his roots as a special education teacher to his leap of faith into Catholic education. We'll explore his philosophy on inclusion, his passion for forming missionary disciples in Christ, and of course, his humorous side. Because if you know Andrew, you know he's got stories that'll make you laugh out loud. Plus, we'll hear about his life with his wife, Breege, his 2 daughters, and his grandchildren who call him Doc. Not to mention his adventures sailing and settling into a new vacation home in Rock Hall, Maryland. And as always, we'll wrap up with our fan favorite Holy Hot Seat and end with Andrew's advice for every Catholic educator who is shaping future saints. So grab a cup of coffee, a wee bit of tea, or something more exciting, and let's get started with this incredible conversation. Andrew, welcome to the show. Hi, Philly faithful. My name is Maria Pardini, and welcome to the Graces of Catholic Education podcast, a place where grace shapes Catholic education one future saint at a time. The mission of this podcast is to build a faith-filled place for Philly's Catholic educators to share their faith, hear innovative practices for today's challenging classrooms, and be inspired by others who are tackling this wild and blessed ride of Catholic education. Join us as we explore the grace that guides us in forming the hearts and minds of Philly's future saints. All right, Andrew, how are you doing today? Thank you for being a guest on the Graces of Catholic Education podcast.
Well, I am doing very well. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with a prayer, if that's okay with you. In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the gift of Dr. McLaughlin. Continue to bless our friendship that we have established so many years ago. We thank you for all of the good works that he brings to the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And we just ask your grace to be with us as we explore all of the blessings that Catholic education brings to each one of us and to the Archdiocese as a whole. We ask this as we do everything in your name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, Andrew, so we're going to kind of start this podcast where I start all of our Philly conversations. Where are you from? Where'd you go to grade school? Where'd you go to high school?
Okay, so I spent most of my childhood in what we call Delaware County. I originally went to a school called St. Carthage, which is closed. The parish is still there. I think it's St. Cyprian's now. It's in West Philadelphia. And then I went to St. Bernadette's in Drexel Hill. From there I went to Monsignor Bonner High School, which is now Bonner Prendy High School. So from there I went to LaSalle College, where I was a special ed teacher. All
right. So I love the Delco roots, actually, the West Philly roots. My dad went to St. Carthage Parish. He went to the Annex, for 1 year, actually. His freshman year, he went to the St. Carthage Annex because West Catholic was too filled up. They couldn't fit, so they put the freshmen in West Philly at St.
Oh,
Carthage Parish. So it's funny
I,
because you don't hear about St. Carthage very much anymore.
no, you don't hear it at all. That's interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
even know they had an annex like that.
Yes, they did. He graduated in 55 from West. So I guess he would have been there in 51, I guess. Is that how that works? 55, 50, yeah, 50,
No.
51, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. All right. So, kind of walk us through your journey from LaSalle through your, how did you become, you said your major was special education. So what did you do when you got a special ed degree in whatever year that was, a different century, I might point out? Because, special ed wasn't as popular, not popular, but like there weren't as many special ed teachers, I guess, back in the day. So what was your professional navigation of that?
It's funny because in high school, I remember trying to decide on what I wanted to do, and I looked around and I saw, some of my friends were wild ones. I said, I really like teaching kids like that, so I decided maybe I'll go into special education, and not thinking what that would look like when I got out of college. But when I went into LaSalle, it was all 4 years. All 3 years for coursework. There was no electives because the whole fourth year they had you student teaching the entire year. So you followed the school year calendar. And then when I got out, I thought, maybe I'll go to, my whole emphasis when I was in college was a lot of pre-student teaching stuff, and a lot of experiences was all with children with intellectual disabilities, and I thought maybe I could teach children with intellectual disabilities. But really in Catholic school they had nothing. When I started in 80. It was right after the first IDA. It was called 95-142, I think. That law was passed in 1975, and by the time so I was really on the first wave of where it was mandated in public schools. And so there were many openings in public schools. I ended up at one also in Delaware County at the southern end of it. And originally I was in an elementary school, taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and then I got bumped to a class of it was junior high children with what at the time they called socially and emotionally disturbed. There were severe behavior problems, and so I did that for on and off that, and then I had a mixed class with kids with learning disabilities. I did that for 10 years. And then I moved out of the county to become a special ed supervisor in a vocational technical school.
So what led you? So we have a lot of similar paths, actually. I'm a special ed teacher too, and I taught in a school for socially and emotionally disturbed students. And I always say that special ed teachers have the best stories because we see kids at their very best, and all the gifts and challenges that they bring, that we always can entertain people because of the wonderful stories that we tell. So, but what was your jump from, when did you decide that you wanted to get out of the classroom and come into administration?
It's funny, when I was a teacher there was at school I said there was a rough transition between principals, and I said to myself, I'm never going to be a principal. I don't know why anybody wanted to be a principal. And then there was an assistant superintendent who kind of took a liking to me, and he said, you need to get into, he said, everybody's hair is like this. He said, everybody's hair is graying. We need to have young people in administration. You should go and become a special ed supervisor. And then he offered me a job running their summer school, but at the last minute he had to pull it. He said somebody from the union wants it, and they're certified, so you can't. So I decided, then I was mad. I'm I'm going to go get my certification. And so that's what I did. I first got my special ed supervisor's certificate, and then I got a job as that supervisor. Really, I was kind of still as a classroom teacher, but I was supposed to be kind of consulting with the vocational teachers and guiding them and working one-on-one with kids, and I wasn't technically an administrator. And when I was in there, then I also got when I was working that job, I got my principal certificate. And then from there, I was offered a job as an alternative school principal. So.
And then how did you get kind of like from the special education realm into supervising in regular education? Because I know that's when I met you. I mean, it might be more than 25 years ago now, Owen J. Roberts. So tell us how you got to that.
Yeah, I went to Owen J. Roberts in 2000. 2000 I went there. So I was in Chester County at the time, at the alternative school, and so I worked with all of the what we call the sending school districts, and things, and I just kind of wanted to progress a little bit. And it's funny, in my mind, I felt, I'm special ed the whole time, working with, nobody's going to want me as an academic leader. So I went back to get my doctorate, and at the same time, one of the ascendant schools offered me a job as an assistant principal. It was a big school. It was at the middle school there, and it was over about 1,100 kids. And when I went there, they said you can be the principal for one grade. You're the assistant principal, but you handle everything with that grade. And I did the scheduling, and so that was kind of my entrance back into, or really my first time back into regular ed. And it was good. It was different. I think once you're a special ed, though, you always view everything from through the glasses of a special ed teacher.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, and then we met when you became the principal at French Creek Elementary School. You went from an assistant principal job to a full principal job at French Creek, right? Is that how it happened?
Well, first I became the acting principal at the middle school, and then the person came back, and then they liked what I did as a principal, so they moved me and gave me my own building. So,
yeah,
and I love that building.
And I know I just was, when I did the trailer podcast, the trailer episode for this podcast, I talk in there about what I learned at Owen J. And I know that I still literally use so many of the gifts and talents that the people bestowed on me in Owen J. I still use that. And I still have very fond memories. In fact, I was invited to a pool party today that got canceled from a teacher from Owen J. So I still they still reach out to me, which is a blessing, which I love, because there was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun at that place.
Yeah, the teachers there were great. I just really liked the teachers there.
Yeah. And then you hopped over to Unionville-Chadds Ford, and you were the principal at Pocopson Elementary School, right?
Yes, I was there probably, to this point, that's the longest I've ever been anywhere, 11 years, although I'm 10 here, so I'm hopeful that this will be the longest job I've ever had. But yeah, that was
I hope
different.
So too, since you're my boss.
Yeah. It was completely different. It was a very, very affluent area. The parents were very involved. They were very dedicated to making sure there was great programs for the kids. They really, I think there, each place I've gone, I've experienced different things, but I think, some of the teachers at Owen J were the best, but the parents at Unionville were just so cooperative and just willing to be supportive of getting programs done and things like that. I just really enjoyed it there, and we were able to accomplish a lot of really, really good things there.
Yeah, so one more question about that. So what do you think, as a special ed, with your roots in special ed and an assistant principal, what do you think was like the one skill that helped you become a really good administrator, that you learned early on that you took with you to be an administrator?
It's I don't know if this is it or not. It might be something else, but I think one thing is that I'm very reflective. So when I, like even when I was a principal, I used to send out a survey of what could I do better, and we do the same thing here. But when I was a principal, I would come back in the fall after the survey, and I would say, okay, they thought my communication was bad, so I had to write almost like an IEP goal for myself, saying, okay, I'm going to do this to make it better. And I did the same thing when I got here, and to try and improve, kind of map out how I can get better at achieving that goal. So I think I don't know if you need to do it as an IEP goal, but I think being reflective, identifying where you have needs, and trying to figure out what you need to do better to grow is probably the best skill I've learned.
I love that. So, all right. So then after decades in public education and what you would have think you retired, I guess, or I don't know, maybe unofficially retired, you decided to come to Catholic education. So tell us how you got here. How did you get in that seat?
I'm telling you, I think it was the Holy Spirit. I was at my school, and it was summertime, early summer, and I kind of was tiring of it for a number of reasons. But I came back and to my office. I went to check on something in the building, and there was something up on my screen saying an advertisement for the special ed director in the Archdiocese. And I said, well, I never thought of looking for a job there. How about so I right away put in something. I got back an email from the HR person said, Indeed. I'm like, that's a strange answer. I never heard of the website called Indeed. I'm like, is this guy English or something? Why is he saying Indeed? So anyhow, then I figured it out, and I applied through Indeed, and I got the information and applied, and got the interview, and eventually got the position. And it was funny, and I just thought, just so many things happened that I thought I was being led there, and I think because of this, I really realized at that point how difficult it was not being able to openly show your religion. As like I remember going in for the interview and saying a prayer at the end. Wow, this is really good. And it was just, and then we did retreats, and we focused on, the first one was focused on just forgiveness, and it was like, wow, which is really one of my needs. So it was and it was just such a completely different experience for me, and it was a big learning curve. And it's funny. So I went out as a special ed person, and I had to implement this great RTI program, response to intervention program, and it was really effective. I was really proud of what we did, and so I was going around to our elementary schools. We have district meetings, and I was meeting with all the principals there and talking about implementing this, and I was talking about, and it wasn't getting the impact I thought I'd get. I don't understand it. So it really wasn't until I learned this. I brought parents in to speak to the principals, and they really connected with the mission. And once I started doing that, I brought other people in to say, this is really special ed is really part of our mission. We're reaching out to the marginalized. This is really what Jesus Christ would want us to do. He was the greatest teacher. That's what he did on earth. This is what we need to model for us. And then we started making headway. But it wasn't until I did that, and I think it was because of my background. I was thinking, okay, I just got to get down to business here and teach the nuts and bolts, where I really didn't. It was a good lesson, but it took me a while to learn that.
Yes. So when you left a really successful public education career, and you came to be the special ed supervisor, and you were supervising, and then you became the what do you call yourself? Secretary or superintendent? I never know what to call you.
So my position previously was a superintendent, but then when they kind of separated elementary and secondary, there was a secretary. That became, so I'm really the secretary for elementary education, but I also serve as a superintendent. They didn't replace the superintendent. Okay. I kind of took that role and the secretary role.
Got it. Okay. So, but the bottom line is that you have 102 elementary schools under your belt. And I think and then we have early childhood centers that fall under you too. So when you left public education, you came into Catholic education, what do you think the biggest challenge was that you faced in that leap?
So I think learning, what I found it very hard. We've brought in a lot of people to do professional development. We've brought in, it's really hard to try and find some people. And I found that it's all, and there probably are exceptions, but really, if you have an experienced Catholic school, it's hard to then be able to provide effective professional development for it, because you have to understand the culture, you have to understand the expectations, you have to understand the resources you have available to you. And I think that was such a big learning curve for me, understanding how do I operate in this arena, and understand all what I have to go with it. Like the amount of resources. Where I came from, I had 5 learning support teachers. I had 2 reading specialists. I had 2 counselors. I had so many resources, and I'm now going to schools that they weren't quite as big, but they didn't have that, and so trying to learn how to navigate that was difficult. And what I did was I really set off just going around the country. Anybody had a conference, or not anybody, I went to as many as I could, seeing what people did across the country. I went to visit other schools and really trying to figure out the best method, and hearing people speak about how they did it was a big learning curve for me. I knew what I wanted, but how did you get this done with the amount of resources you have, and then also kind of incorporate the climate. We had another example of this was somebody sent us this organization who was going to pay our principals to go to a professional development, and they wanted to evaluate them. So before they let them into a program, so I sent 2 of my best principals, and they went, and they were all from a public school kind of mindset, and they rejected both of them. Now these were 2 of my best, and when I talked to them, they said, well, I don't think they understand that they lack these basic skills. And I said, like what? They said, well, they don't have the kids have passes to go to the bathroom, and they don't have them sign a sheet here, and they don't have them. And it was like all this stuff that is not part of our culture. We're smaller, we have higher expectations for kids. Everybody knows everybody. And I'm thinking, so that kind of really changed my focus to make sure when I bring people in, they understand our culture and understand what our expectations are, and they understand how our mission is integrated into everything we do. And so that was a really, really big kind of learning curve.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even for myself, I think that was a big learning curve. I came from a public school too, because my heart was always started in special ed, and it is very different. And I do think that we have 102 schools, and we have 102 different schools. Like no 2 of our schools really function in the same way, even with the same types of resources. So I definitely think that it has been a big challenge. But I want to talk a little bit about your special ed background and how much of an impact you've had in the special ed realm in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. But talk to me, what do you think some of the challenges that Catholic schools face in supporting kids with special needs, and how you're addressing those challenges?
Well, I think if you ask most people, they'll say it's financial. I think the biggest challenge is changing the mindset. I think, we had these schools originally, and I think we're past this point to some degree, but, the Archdiocese was really ahead of its time, and they offer special education services really way before PL 94-142, and, in 1975 they offered services. And they had a number of special education segregated schools. So it was great that they offered these, and they called them day schools because most of the schools back then in the 50s were residential, and it was nice that the Archdiocese had these schools. But then as special ed evolved and grew, became, and inclusion became kind of the premier model or the ideal setting for teaching, and all those strategies that are associated with inclusion. We still had people whose mindset was, okay, I don't have to deal with special ed kids in my class. I should be sending special education kids to these segregated schools. So, and that wasn't much in the elementary, but people had that in mind and didn't understand, a mild disability, and, they didn't understand special ed was just one thing to them. And so there was a lot of education where, okay, this is what it is, and you can deal with them in your classroom, and it's actually best for them. We hear there's a classroom that they can begin in public schools that'll take care of them. Like, they all had this idea that there's a special classroom that they spend all day, and so that was really where the difficulty was, getting past all of that. And and then once I think our teachers saw that, they were great. They just, it was kind of really energizing going around talking to people and saying, yeah, well, I want to do the best I can. How can I do it? And it was just really, because that's kind of what you do now is what I used to do. And in a way, it was the best job I ever had. It was before Zoom, and I would just drive to different schools, and I'd meet with teachers, and I'd be in the classroom, and I would go to, maybe 3 schools in a day, and it was just really, I just loved it. And it wasn't like, I would meet with people and just talk about positive ideas, and so, so it was successful. But I think I found the barrier wasn't that they were against it; it's just that they didn't know that really getting past those kind of myths that existed.
Yeah, I mean, I say that this is the best job that I've ever had, the job that I get to do now. I mean, I just go where the Spirit leads me, and I'm in classrooms all the time, and I'm seeing all the wonderful miracles that our teachers are just creating on a daily basis. And I think one of the things that I realized is they don't even know they're doing it. We tell them that they have a special ed student in their room, and they're like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not equipped for that. I can't do that. I'm afraid I don't have all the skills. But what they didn't realize is that they had those kids in their rooms all the time, and they were meeting their needs. And we sometimes we put a label on them, and they're like, I can't do it. But they have been doing it, because we have been including kids in Catholic education way longer in our regular classrooms than they really have been anywhere else. So, I think that's like such a great part of my job, to be able to go out there and see what they're doing. And it's really awesome. And I'm so thankful to you for calling me up and offering me a job with no job description. I tell that story all the time. I said, Dr. McLaughlin called me up and said, I have a job for you. You'd be perfect for it. And I said, all right, well, I'll consider it, of course. Send me the job description. And he's like, well, there is no job description, but you're going to be perfect for this job. So that's how I tell people how I got my job. So I'm thankful for a job with no job description.
The other funny part is when I would go around to the teachers, they weren't concerned about the work that they would have to do with the child or anything like that. What they're concerned about was that they'd be letting them down. Well, I don't know if he's going to be able to learn, to multiply fractions, and they're worried that they weren't going to be able to. They're so conscientious about delivering the curriculum. They're like, I'm not doing my job if I can't get that there. And changing that kind of mindset was hard.
Yeah.
But also refreshing.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I say that I feel like they're always worried that they're not going to be enough, that they're not enough, that they're not giving enough. And part of my job is and that's hopefully what part of this podcast will do, is like let people know that they are enough, that they are what God has intended for them to be that child's teacher this year, and that they are enough. So I can't say that enough to the teachers that I speak to on a daily basis. So talk to me a little bit about the Rising Together Alliance, because I know that that's one of your little heart moments, your babies. So tell me how the Rising Together Alliance came about, because that is really one of our awesome special education initiatives, and I just want to give you a chance to highlight that, because I know how closely you hold that to your heart.
Yeah, so when I was trying to learn about how other areas in the country handle Catholic education and special ed, I went around, especially in the Midwest, I found a couple of dioceses and archdioceses that had these really strong foundations and parent groups that kind of supported Catholic education. I mean, special education in Catholic education. So I kind of had in the back of mind that we have to do that. And, I'm a big believer in not having a vision, but being able to know what you want and then recognizing the opportunity. And then I came across a person who wanted to enroll their child in school, one of our schools, and so she had a Down syndrome child, and I took her to one of our segregated schools, and she was very nice to me, and and I actually learned a lot from her. And based on that, and deep down, I kind of always felt this anyhow. And so anyhow, we worked to get her child into a school and work that. But as I got to know her, I'm thinking, we need to start this. And really, then she found a couple other people, and it got going. And it was really, just four or five people that started it, and they were just dedicated and tons of energy and tons of passion and tons of intellect, and they just did a great job. And and I think it's the Holy Spirit that led us together. So
yeah, I mean, the Rising Together Alliance is really fueled by a lot of people, but I think that the heart of it is in those three moms, and that they are like the true mama bears of inclusion for kids with intellectual disabilities within our regular education Catholic schools. I mean, they are a force to be reckoned with. I remember the first time I was on a Zoom with them. You had me before I even, got the job, and you had me on a Zoom with them, and I was like, boy, these women they are moving mountains here.
Oh my gosh, the passion. You're energized, but you're also exhausted after like an hour-long call, like to do this. But it was just, we have come, I never anticipated we could come so far in so little time. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I know how indebted they are to you and to the work that you've been able to do. They gave you their first Visionary Award, and now it's named after you. So you have an award named after you, which is, that is, I'm trying to find the right word of what it is for someone that knows you for 30 years, that you have an award named after you. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, it is really, really cool.
Yeah. But the gala was awesome. That was something that I don't think there was a person in that room at Springfield Country Club in March that left without having shed at least one tear of joy for what was celebrated in that room, because it was definitely a moment and a time where we stopped and said, we have a lot of work to do, but we have done some really, really remarkable things here, and they should be celebrated and rejoiced in. So tell me what lights a fire in you about Catholic education. What is it? Like, what is the thing that you're like, that you're on fire for this?
I think it's just, I think especially now, I think our team is just on fire. And I think just being around everybody on our team, it just keeps you energized. They're all just so passionate about it. I think there's a completely different passion for what we do than you see in other areas. And I just think there's we're never off. We enjoy what we're doing, and we're proud of what we're doing, and we're also work like the devil to get it done, I guess, but we work really hard to get it done. So I think it's hard not to be passionate when you're around all that passion.
Yeah, I think our team moves pretty quickly, and we do a lot with a little amount of people. We don't have a lot of people, but I think that we are, we're moving. We're on fire for for the work that we have to do. And it's a small but mighty team, actually. So, and we definitely have a lot of fun together.
We do. And, I think that's a common thread that I've found around the country. I mean, the Catholic schools office, they're really small, and it's amazing just across the country how small some of them are and all the work they get done. So I think we're in that mold,
But I definitely think we get energized as a team when we get out to and see what the awesome work that our principals and our teachers are doing in our Catholic schools. You understand. You come from a public background. When you were a principal of a public school and you had like a clogged toilet, you called the district maintenance people and they came. You had a bug problem and the exterminator came from the district, or an electrical problem. We have nuns painting bathrooms. So they're janitors and they're nurses and they're all those things. And so are teachers. They're the first line of defense. So I think that we get energized as a team from seeing all the awesome things that our principals and our teachers and all the people that work in our buildings do every day. So that's where I think we get our strength from.
Yeah.
So, we do have some challenges, though, obviously. We have like rising costs. We do have competition from public schools. So how do you encourage our teachers and our principals to stay committed to the mission despite the obstacles that face them every day?
Well, I think that the best thing we can do is just try to provide them as much support as we can, listen to what their needs are and try and help them meet those challenges. We start a lot of programs. I think, our program to get teachers, our resident program, our program to kind of help, maintain our teachers and stop teachers leaving. That program's working well. We have a couple initiatives on that, and I think certainly the work we do with curriculum and data management is helping them. So I think, and then celebrating the success is all that we have, trying to recognize that. So I think things like that are really, I think they don't need much, but I think if they feel supported and they feel that they're doing a good job, then I think that's all it takes to keep them going.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the curriculum work and the successes that they've had academically. So we do recognize our schools, and several of them have won blue ribbon status, but you created something that I want to talk about for a minute. The schools of the distinction was kind of like something that you created, I believe. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that and why you created that and how I think important you think that the Schools of Distinction Award is.
Yeah, so, as you mentioned, we have almost 50% of our schools, we have 50 schools that have received blue ribbon. And, there is a bit of, blue ribbon high achievement award is tied a little bit to socioeconomic, the area you're from and how economically advantaged the school is. But I always felt that we have some schools in areas that weren't as economically advantaged that were teaching just as hard, were working just as hard, and were doing great things, but they weren't going to ever be recognized at a blue ribbon status just because, where they didn't have the background knowledge coming in, and they're always, the schools they're probably making more than a year's worth of growth every year, but still they're never going to get caught up in being in the high percentile ranks for a blue ribbon. So we started a program where it's based on growth, that if a school shows at least a year's worth of growth in 85% of its classes, or with different rankings, they could get a School of Distinguished Instruction Award. And I think the other thing it did was it really helped them focus on trying to use data and start looking at the needs and where they need to improve, and because we have good data, but before that, people were focused on just on their percentile score, where they rank against everybody else in the country, rather than looking at how we're doing in the classroom and how we're doing year over year, looking at the NCE scores and things like that. So that was an effort to kind of change the focus a little bit, but do it in a positive way, and kind of bring attention to all the good things we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that the growth is so important, because if you're not, you could be really good. You could be blue ribbon every year, actually, if you're really good. But if you're just staying there and you're not growing and you're not having your students grow, then really, like, it doesn't really mean that much. It means that you just had smart kids. But if you're not growing the kids, then so I think that that's so important. So tell me about the future. What do you think the future is for Catholic education? You're a visionary, so tell me, what do you think the future is for Catholic education?
I think in Philadelphia, it's really good. I think it looks really bright. In addition, we have our SPAT program, which is really, we work with 60-some schools at this point, where we're keeping them financially sustainable, and we've achieved where 20 of them are financially self-sustainable, where they're not receiving anything from the parishes. So I think that, coupled with our focus on curriculum and on data and on enrollment and on a Catholic identity, I think it really looks. One of the things we changed is we look at it monthly now, and doing that and strategizing with that really has, I think, changed the way our hopes. So for the last 4 years, I hope I don't jinx myself. Our enrollment's going up. I'm hoping it goes up as well this year. But but I think it looks bright. I think our schools are really poised to continually improve. I think we have a lot of really good programs out there. You have your Graces program that's really focused on good instruction. That's going to be modeled to everybody. We have a whole new re-energizing of our curriculum, which I think is really going to be helpful. We have people focusing on reaching out and helping with enrollment. So I think, it's just an exciting time to get everything done.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I've asked that question to a lot of people, most of the people that have been on this podcast, and every one of them, undoubtedly, without missing a beat, says that they really believe that the future of Catholic education is a bright one. And that's so, it's reassuring and it's rejuvenating, because, I hope to have grandchildren someday that I want to send to Catholic schools in the city of Philadelphia. So what is one big thing you still want to accomplish? Because you're not done. We know you're not done. What do you want to be remembered for, and what do you want to still accomplish here in the Arch?
Well, I would like to accomplish having every one of our schools have a learning support program. I think we're slowly chipping away at that, and that could be done in a million different ways, but I just think that having those resources in each school would help them. So that's probably my number one priority that I would like to see accomplished.
I love that. I think that's why you hired me.
It is. And I would like to see also if we could somehow impact seeing more families and children go back to Mass. If there's something we could do in the schools that would impact that. There would be my two things I would like to see us change.
I love that. I feel like that the Mass one is going to be on some agenda and a staff meeting in our. We're changing our staff meeting, so I don't know if it's going to go into the ad hoc or the other one.
The tactical. So
we'll have to ask Julie, our coach, where we should put that. But I love that too. And I think that's awesome. I love it. So how do you kind of want to be remembered in the AOP when your time is done, which will not be for several years? Let's make that very clear.
Well, I think, it's so funny. And people, when I first got this job, they would say, what's your vision? And I know there's a lot written on how important a leader's vision is. And I think the thing that is missing with that is I think there's so many leaders out there who come in and they have a vision and they push the vision and they see change, but as soon as they leave, it doesn't maintain itself. And I think when you're looking at a vision, it shouldn't come from me. It should be shared. Like, my role is I go around and I find out what people think where we need to go, and what they think our weaknesses are, and then I come back, I work with people and say, okay, here's this, how do we bring this forward, and what should it. So I think, when I leave, what I would like to see is some of the things that happen are working, and they want to continue it, and it's sustainable, and so that's kind of how I'd like to be remembered, that things that we started sustain themselves.
Stayed in place. That's awesome. I love it. All right, we're going to actually switch gears for a little bit here. So we're going to kind of go and let our listeners get to know the nuts and bolts of Doc and of the husband that you are to Breege. I'm lucky enough, blessed enough to be able to call your wonderful, beautiful, hysterically funny wife a friend. So Breege is from Ireland. And so tell us how you two met. How did you meet an Irish lassie?
So my parents were Irish. They both grew up in Ireland, and they came over here, actually, and then they got married over here, and they went back, and my sister was born in Ireland, and then eventually they moved back, and I was born here. So my dad was going back to visit, like, his brother and his friends he grew up with, and they do a thing on Sundays after Mass. They call it raking. They go around and they visit people, and I was going around with him to visit somebody he grew up with, and it was my wife's father, and I went in and to him, and we had a cup of tea, and of course she uses a big joke, but she said she felt sorry for me that I was sitting there by myself, and she came over. But that's how I met her. I met her in her kitchen.
That's nice. So she took pity on you.
She did, and she went out with me that night. We had a date that night, and then she happened to be coming over here. That was late August, in October. So we connected a few times via letters, and then when she came over in August, I went up and met her. She was in Chicago, and then she went to Connecticut, and I went up and saw her in Connecticut, and took her down and showed her Philadelphia, and so then we started dating. I went back and forth. I went over there at Christmas and went back over in September. Spent the summer over there, and then she came back here in the fall. And I think the next year we got married.
And it's been blissful ever since.
Ever since. So it's been 49 years. So
that's an accomplishment. 30, that is an accomplishment.
Sorry, 39 years.
Oh my gosh, we're not editing that out. I won't let you. Sorry, but that's staying in there. It feels like almost 50 years, but that's all right. It will be 50 years one day. So what do you think the funniest thing about being married to someone with an Irish sense of humor is? Like, what is it?
It's funny. I think I'm much funnier than she is.
That's not true at all, actually. She is one of the wittiest people I know.
Yeah, she has a quick line for everything. Yeah, she does. So, I don't know. It's just great. I enjoy it. Somebody calls, because for so long, there's a lot of night events, so I'll always take her with me for a lot of reasons, but one, a Christian brother one time came up and said, Andrew, that's your secret weapon. She can schmooze people for you. So.
That is definitely true. And so as someone who's known you for a really long time, I really admire the marriage that you guys have. It has been almost 40 years. I know that. And, I look at you and I see two people that really genuinely enjoy being together. And that is really reassuring to see that. And I love that, because you definitely each compliment each other. She definitely compliments you more than you compliment her, but it is mutual, and your admiration for each other is actually, and your likeness of each other is really, it's something really cool. And I know that anybody who sees you guys would agree to that.
Well, thank you.
So you have two girls, and one of them has two lovely little kids that call you Doc. So tell us how your grandchildren kind of came to call you Doc.
So, my wife did not want to be called Granny, and she was debating, what they're going to call her and all that. And this is before, I guess maybe right after they were born. And, they asked me what I wanted them to call me, and I, of course, jokingly said, I want them to call me Dr. McLaughlin. And so anyhow, they got that. So, we'll just call them Doc. So they came up with that. My two daughters came up with that. So
that's good. That's funny, because it's funny that you would even say Dr. McLaughlin, because I don't think you really.
Yeah, I never really.
I certainly don't call you Dr. McLaughlin. Yeah. You're just kind of just Andrew, which I love. So what's it like being Doc? What's it like being a grandfather?
It's great. The only difficult part is that they live in Boston, so I only get to see them a couple times a year. But I just saw them this month, probably the most I've seen them since they're born. But it's great, they just they're funny. The things that they'll like. My daughter was just at Home Depot with them, and they were getting something, and my grandson Killian said, "Let's get Doc's cart, like the kind of cart." Everything's where my daughter found this table that she wanted made, so I made her, based on these plans, she gave me a table, and it's Doc's table, everything, So it's funny, he just, he kind of, it's like he keeps me connected, even though like we're so far away, so it's cute.
Yeah. So tell us their Irish names, because they have very Irish names.
Yeah, so it's Killian and Kiva.
And where did those names originate from? I know Killian, but I don't know Kiva, actually. But you tell us where they came from.
I think, so I have another daughter. I have Megan, and I have Maya, and Maya is spelled M-A-I-R. So my wife originally was an Irish speaker, so she spoke Gaelic growing up, and she learned English till later. So, she's very proud of the Irish language and her heritage, and she speak it to them. So I think my daughter Megan just wanted to kind of honor that, we did stick to it. With Maya, people have a hard time when we see the name spelled M-A-I-R-E, that they're like, how is that Maya? But it's with the Irish phonetics. And Kiva is, people would never get Kiva from the Irish spelling. So, and I think it adds a uniqueness to it, and it kind of keeps them in touch with their heritage. So I think it's cute, really cute.
I love it. I think they're beautiful names. So you talked about one of your two hobbies, your two big hobbies. Woodworking was one of them, correct? And then the other one is sailing or fishing. I don't know. Is it both, or is it just sailing, or do you catch anything, or do you not fish? You just sail?
I haven't fished. I've been sailing about a year, but I like both of them. I love boating and sailing and fishing. So, so I like fly fishing, but I haven't done it in over a year. And with the boat, sometimes I do fishing off of that in the Chesapeake Bay.
So you just bought a place down, a vacation place, I believe. I meant to comment on your tie yesterday. I did notice that your tie was from Rock Hall yesterday.
All right.
I saw that. And I'm a little slightly disappointed, actually, that you don't have a bow tie on for this interview. I know the Archbishop loves your bow tie.
I debated wearing one, but
I'm surprised you did not wear a bow tie and matching shoelaces. I'm shocked at that, actually. But that's all right. We'll have to get you on again, and we'll get the bow tie. So, all right, are you ready for the holy hot seat?
Sure.
All right, so the Holy Hot Seat is like some rapid fire questions that I just ask, and you kind of just answer the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? All right,
Okay.
so favorite saint to pray to? Favorite saint to pray to?
I would say Saint Joseph.
Oh, I like that. Is that a woodworker connection?
Yes.
Okay. I know the answer to this. I don't even know why I'm asking. Coffee or tea to survive your long meeting schedule?
You know, it's so funny you say that. I'm a late coffee drinker. I drank tea until maybe 15 years ago, and now I drink much more coffee than I did. But I was never drank any coffee until 15 years ago.
That's crazy. I don't drink coffee either. I'm not a coffee drinker, and yeah. All right. So if you could swap,
but it's really hard to find a good cup of tea out. I have Irish tea at home and I drink that. But when you go out, you get these little tea bags, and so.
Well, you struggle going out. Let's like, you are not like a fan of a lot of different restaurant food items. So you definitely struggle with finding a place. Italian is not your thing for food.
I did well yesterday.
You did. You ate pizza. I'm proud of you. That was good. Okay. If you could swap jobs with a teacher for one day, what grade would you teach?
Second grade.
Oh, second grade. Tell me why.
Well, I think first grade's hard because you're trying to teach them all the rules. And in second grade, they're kind of all broken in. And I think there's a lot of, they're still so cute, and it would just be a fun day.
Yes, it would. Actually, it would be a fun day for us to put a video in the classroom of when you were teaching second grade. That would be the funniest thing, actually.
The funniest thing was when I was a principal in one of my last places, a teacher had to leave, and she was a second grade teacher, and she kind of needed somebody to go the whole last day, and they couldn't get a sub. So I said, I'll come down to it. Like, all the teachers were so worried. Like, wait a minute, like, give me a break. We have been in this for 35 years. I can handle a second grade class for an afternoon.
I think we should try that. I mean, I think we should do superintendent for a day. I actually said I wanted to go back into like subbing every once in a while, just to kind of keep my hand in what it was like to be in a classroom. I feel like the further along we get, the farther away we get from what it's like to be in the trenches every day.
It's probably a good idea. It's just the thought of things all piling up, but.
I know. Okay. But can you remember one of the funniest things a student ever said to you back in the day? There's something that sticks out at you? Was it the Pledge of Allegiance or the National? I forget what we were singing. What was it? And he said, the Pledge of Allegiance. And he said, who were the four witches? I said, what? Four witches stand. What do you mean? I'm like, so the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, for which it stands. He thought that we were talking about four witches. That's a good one. I like that. Okay, sailboat or motorboat? Which one for a day on the water?
That's a really tough one. If it's a nice, like if there's a breeze, a good breeze, I would like a sailboat.
Okay.
But if it's often the Chesapeake gets really hot and no air, then definitely the power boat.
Okay. All right. If Breach planned a surprise date night, would it be dinner, dancing, or something totally different? What would be her surprise for you?
Would it be with me?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be dancing. So, I think a part of it would have to include a night at a pub.
Yes, yeah, with a Guinness, right?
With a Guinness, right? Yeah.
It's got to have Guinness. Yes, we judge our places.
Finish off with a Guinness, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, best Irish phrase you've learned from Breach that you sneak into conversations.
Well, I don't try to sneak it in, but I always use the term we. A wee bit of this and a wee bit of that.
Yes,
So
you
it's not,
do. Yes, you do.
so I use a tad.
I love it. Yeah. All right, if you could have any superpower to make your job easier, what would it be?
What would it be? I would love to apparate. It would be so good if I didn't have to travel an hour and a half. So if I could just apparate home, that would be cool, really cool.
Okay. I mean, that could be within our lifetime, actually. Like, that's not that far. It can't be that far out of the realm of time travel. All right. Favorite Catholic school tradition from either St. Bernie's or Bonner?
Mm. I just think the whole thing of Catholic Schools Week, how much fun it is, and just the celebration and the no homework and a different thing every day. It's just such a fun week. I think that's the best.
Yeah, I remember that too. I always say that and the May procession are my two favorite things. Okay, so, favorite hymn, favorite Catholic school hymn, favorite church hymn. Doesn't have to be Catholic school. Favorite church hymn.
I don't know if I can. I was just thinking about the May procession. When I was in 8th grade, I was given special permission not to sing at the May procession. So I haven't really sung much in church since then.
Why is that? Because you were a terrible singer? What was that?
Yes,
Is that why?
They thought I was a terrible singer. They stopped the whole thing. They said, "Where's this noise coming from?" And they walked up and down the rows till they located it. And they said, "Andrew, we're going to give you special permission. You can just mouth it. You don't have to sing."
That is great. I did not know that story, but I'm going to use that. And I'm so glad that the entire Archdiocese is actually going to know that story very soon. Favorite children's book?
But anyhow, if I have one, it would be Ave Maria. It was my
Oh, okay. Ave Maria. Okay. All right. Favorite children's book?
It would not be a Dr. Seuss book. A couple I used to read. One was The Rainbow Fish. One was A Broom on a Witch. One I would take and read to them at The Giving Tree. I was not a big Dr. Seuss fan. So.
Okay. All right. That's all right. And last question in the Holy Hot Seat. Favorite cheesesteak place?
Well, I don't know if they have the best, but it's really a touristy one. But Gino's, just because it's so much fun to go there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Gino's. Yeah, a lot of people have said Gino's. Okay, and here's our signature question. We're going to wrap it up. We ask everyone this last question. No matter what type of job you have in Catholic education, everybody gets this question. So here it is. If you could whisper one piece of advice to every Catholic school educator as they walk into their classroom each day that would help them shape future saints, what would it be?
I would tell them something I said yesterday, that remember, you're here because that's where God wants you to be. So just know what you're doing is what He wants you to do.
I love that. I had an idea that after I did several of these podcasts, like a lot, I was going to write a book, and I was going to incorporate everybody's best piece of advice into a book. And because I think that everyone gives a different pearl of wisdom. No two people yet have said the same piece of advice, and it's all important. And almost every one of them actually has to do with their faith. So I love the fact that we are able, in a place that we can just freely talk about that all the time, and it guides everything we do. So that kind of wraps it up. If there's anything else that you want to impart on us, this would be your time to do it. But I'm so thankful that you took the time out of your schedule. I know that you're really busy. I have access to your calendar, and I know that you're busy. But I do think that it's important for our listeners to hear, where you come from and what's important to you in kind of a different way. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate our friendship. Yes, you're first. You are definitely first.
Tune back in after that.
No. I appreciate our friendship. We've known each other for a really, really long time. And I've always considered you one of my mentors. I've learned an incredible amount from you in terms of, making room for every child and including everyone. And just some of the ways that you deal with situations have been beneficial to someone who has some of the tendencies that I might have. So I really am appreciative of your time, and I'm appreciative of our friendship. And I just want to thank you very much
Well, me
for
too. It was
bringing
a
it
lot
on
of
here.
fun.